The evening sun dipped low over Maitama, its golden rays casting long shadows across the Linton mansion. The air inside, however, was heavy and suffocating. Amara Linton, elegant yet unprepared for the storm about to sweep her life, sat in the living room as her father, Edward Linton, nervously adjusted his agbada. His eyes betrayed guilt and desperation, though his lips twisted into a forced smile. "My daughter," he began, his voice cracking, "I'd like you to meet someone important. Someone who will secure our family's future." From the doorway entered Adam Steele, a man whose very presence silenced the room. Tall, broad-shouldered, and impeccably dressed in a dark caftan with subtle gold embroidery, his aura was more chilling than regal. His reputation as one of Abuja's most feared power brokers preceded him. Men whispered his name in corridors of politics, and women crossed themselves when his convoy of black SUVs roared through the city. "Amara," Edward continued, avoiding her piercing gaze, "this is your future husband." Amara froze. Her heart pounded against her ribcage. "Future husband? Dad? What is this nonsense?" she demanded. Adam's lips curled into a smirk. "It's no nonsense. From today, you belong to me." She stood abruptly, anger and disbelief coursing through her veins. "I will never be yours." But Edward stepped forward, his trembling hands outstretched. "Sweetheart, you don't understand. We are finished. Bankrupt. The companies are gone, the estates mortgaged. This is the only way to save us." Her eyes widened. "Bankrupt? But we were rich." "We were," Edward interrupted, tears gathering in his eyes. "Now everything is gone. And this marriage is the only deal that can keep us alive." Amara's world collapsed in that instant. She had always known her father to be proud, even arrogant, but never desperate enough to sell his daughter's future. Her chest tightened as her gaze shifted from her father's pleading face to Adam's cold, possessive stare. "Listen well, Amara," Adam said, his voice low and dangerous. "You cannot run. You cannot hide. Whether you hate me or not, you will become my wife." Amara clenched her fists, fire burning in her veins. "No way in hell will you have me." Adam stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers with chilling intensity. "You'll crawl back. They always do." Her father dropped to his knees, sobbing, torn between guilt and helplessness. But Amara's spirit, though shaken, refused to break. Inside, she whispered to herself, "They may strip me of wealth, they may force me into chains, but they will never own my soul." That night, as the mansion fell silent, Amara sat by her window staring out at the glittering Abuja skyline. She felt trapped, a prisoner in her own home. Yet in her heart, a seed of defiance was planted. She promised herself, whatever Adam Steele's reasons, whatever her father's betrayal, she would fight back. This was not just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her freedom, and her future. The next morning, the Linton mansion was filled with whispers. Staff members avoided Amara's gaze, bowing their heads as though mourning something already lost. She stormed into her father's study, determined to demand the truth. "Dad, you owe me an explanation," she said sharply, her arms crossed. "What do you mean we're bankrupt? And what about Mom's company? She built Linton Holdings with her blood. Don't tell me you've thrown it all away." Edward sat slouched behind his mahogany desk, a shadow of the man he once was. He sighed heavily, his hands trembling as they fiddled with an old fountain pen. "Amara, your mother's will stated that her wealth would remain untouched until you turned 27. Until then, I was only supposed to manage it." Amara's chest tightened. Manage it? Or waste it? His silence was answer enough. Her voice cracked with disbelief. You gambled away Mom's legacy, the empire she built, all so you could live in luxury? Edward buried his face in his hands. I thought I could handle it. The business deals failed. The debts piled up. Adam came at the right time. He offered protection, power, a way out. Amara felt her knees weaken, rage boiling inside her. So you sold me? To a criminal? Before Edward could answer, the heavy door creaked open. Adam Steele stepped into the room, flanked by two men in black suits. His presence was suffocating. Sold? Adam repeated, his tone icy. No, Amara, I don't buy women, I choose them. He leaned forward, his dark eyes glinting. And I chose you. Amara took a step back, her fists clenched. Why me? What do you want from me? Adam smirked, his voice low and deliberate. It's too early for you to know. But believe me, your mother's legacy, your name, your very bloodline, are more valuable than you realize. Her heart sank. He knew something she didn't. Something hidden in her mother's will. Adam moved closer, his cologne filling the air, his hand brushing the back of her chair. You will marry me, Amara, and when you do, your father's debts disappear. If you refuse. His gaze shifted to Edward, who cowered behind the desk. He pays with his life. Edward's voice cracked, pleading. Please, sweetheart. Do it for me. Save me. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Betrayed by the man who was supposed to protect her, trapped in by the monster who claimed to own her, she felt her world crumbling. But deep within her, the fire of defiance still burned. They think I'm weak. They think I'll surrender. But I will uncover the truth. I will fight. For the first time, Amara realized this was no longer about debts. It was about power, secrets, and survival. Adam wanted her for a reason tied to her mother's fortune, and she was determined to discover it. As Adam left the room with his guards, he turned and said with chilling calmness, The wedding is in 2 weeks. Abuja will witness it. Don't waste time resisting. It will only make the fall harder. The door slammed shut, leaving Amara staring at her father. A bitter truth sank in. She could no longer trust him. From this moment forward, she was alone. But not broken. 2 weeks later, the grand bells of St. Andrew's Cathedral in Abuja echoed across the city. Guests arrived in sleek convoys, women in glittering head wraps and flowing gowns, men in designer agbadas and tailored suits. The air was thick with curiosity. Everyone wanted to witness the wedding between Adam Steele, the feared power broker, and Amara Linton, the heiress forced into his world. Inside the cathedral, Amara sat in a cream silk gown, her veil drawn low. Her hands trembled as she clutched a rosary, whispering silent prayers. The weight of betrayal and fear pressed on her chest, but her eyes burned with determination. I may walk down this aisle, but I will not let them break me. Her father, Edward, stood beside her, pale and restless. He leaned close and whispered, Please, Amara, just go through with this. Once you're married, everything will be fine. Fine? She hissed. You've ruined everything, and you've given me to a monster. Before Edward could reply, the heavy cathedral doors creaked open. Adam Steele entered, dressed in a white agbada embroidered with gold, exuding both elegance and menace. The crowd hushed, awed and unsettled by his presence. His eyes met Amara's through the veil, cold yet strangely unreadable. The priest began the ceremony. We are gathered here today to unite Adam Steele and Amara Linton in holy matrimony. Amara's heart raced. Every word felt like a chain tightening around her soul. She repeated to herself, Stay strong, endure, fight later. Do you, Adam Steele, take Amara Linton to be your lawfully wedded wife? Adam's deep voice echoed confidently. I do. The priest turned to Amara. And do you, Amara Linton, take Adam Steele?" Her lips parted, but before she could speak, the doors burst open. Gasps filled the cathedral. A woman in a flowing red dress stormed down the aisle, her voice sharp and filled with fury. "I object!" The crowd erupted in whispers. The woman's eyes blazed as she pointed at Adam. "I am his wife, and for the last 2 years he has hidden me while chasing this poor girl. He is a liar, and this marriage is a fraud." Amara's blood ran cold. She turned to Adam, her heart pounding. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The priest froze, clutching his Bible. Guests leaned forward, some scandalized, others amused. Edward Linton nearly collapsed where he stood. Amara's voice trembled as she spoke. "Is this true, Adam? Is she your wife?" Adam's dark eyes flicked from the woman to Amara. His silence was louder than any confession. In that moment, Amara understood. She wasn't just a pawn in her father's debts. She was caught in a deeper web of secrets, power, and betrayal. And whatever Adam's reasons for choosing her, they were far darker than she had imagined. The cathedral descended into chaos. Guests shouting, cameras flashing, whispers of scandal spreading like wildfire. But in the midst of it all, Amara stood tall. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt the tide shifting. If Adam had secrets, she would uncover them. If her family had betrayed her, she would expose them. And if this marriage was meant to break her, then she would turn it into the weapon that saved her. While chaos rocked Abuja with Amara's scandalous wedding, in Lagos, another storm was brewing. At the sleek glass headquarters of Linton Holdings on Victoria Island, Molly Linton, Amara's cousin, stood at the window overlooking the bustling city. She was graceful, sharp-minded, and carried the same fire in her eyes that her late mother once had. But beneath her calm exterior, Molly was terrified. Her 27th birthday was only days away, and with it, the condition of her mother's will. Unless she married before the deadline, the company her mother built would fall into the greedy hands of her father, Richard Linton, and his cunning second wife. Her stepmother, Vanessa, glided into the office, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. Beside her, Molly's stepsister, Clara, smirked, sipping on a latte. "You look stressed, dear," Vanessa purred. "Perhaps it's because time is running out. Without a husband, you'll lose everything, and your father will finally get what he deserves." Molly clenched her jaw. "What my father deserves is exposure. He's been feeding off my mother's fortune for 20 years. That ends with me." Clara laughed coldly. "Big words for someone with no fiancé. Who would marry you in such a hurry?" The words stung because they were true. Molly had dedicated her life to preserving her mother's empire, too busy to build a love life. And now, with her birthday looming, she was out of time. That evening, as she drove home across 3rd Mainland Bridge, Molly's mind raced. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. What if I lose everything? What if Mom's legacy dies with me? But before she could think further, her vision blurred. Her eyelids grew heavy. The coffee she had been given earlier, it tasted bitter. Too bitter. The car swerved violently. Tires screeched. The guardrail loomed ahead. In her final moments of fading consciousness, Molly realized this was no accident. They were trying to kill her. With a sickening crash, the car veered off the road, tumbling toward the edge of the lagoon. Darkness swallowed her. Hours later, in the sterile brightness of a hospital ward, Molly opened her eyes. Her head throbbed. Her body ached. But she was alive. At her bedside stood a man she had never seen before. Tall, with an air of quiet danger, dressed in a fitted caftan with rolled sleeves, his expression was unreadable. "You're lucky," he said in a deep, steady voice. "Someone tampered with your car. Sleeping pills in your system. The handbrake disengaged. But you survived." Molly's lips trembled. "Oh, are you?" "Jack Magnus," he replied, extending his hand. "And whether you like it or not, you need me." As their eyes met, Molly felt a strange shiver. She had escaped death, but her war had just begun. The hum of the hospital machines was the only sound in the quiet ward. Molly sat upright in bed, her mind racing. Her family had tried to kill her. The inheritance deadline was in less than 48 hours. If she did nothing, everything her mother built would slip into her father's hands. Jack Magnus leaned casually against the wall, arms folded. His presence was unsettling, dangerous yet strangely reassuring. Molly studied him, searching for clues. Who was this man who had saved her life? "You don't know me," Jack said calmly, as if reading her thoughts. "But I know your story. Everyone in Lagos does. The heiress who must marry before 27. The families circling like vultures." Molly's heart pounded. "And what? You want to profit from my misfortune too?" Jack smirked. "I'm a businessman, Molly. I don't deal in pity, but I do deal in opportunities." She narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" Jack stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Marry me. Tonight, you'll secure the company. I'll secure an alliance with Linton Holdings. We both win." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Molly's first instinct was outrage. Marriage? To a stranger tied to Lagos' underground world? It was madness. But then she remembered her stepmother's mocking smile, Clara's taunting words, her father's greed. She saw her car crashing again in her mind, felt the bitterness of betrayal coursing through her veins. "What's the catch?" she asked. Her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Jack's eyes gleamed. "Simple. I protect you from your enemies. You make me your husband on paper. In return, I get a share of influence. No love, no strings, unless you want them." Molly hesitated, staring at her trembling hands. Was this what her life had come to, begging a Mafia heir to save her? Yet as the minutes ticked away, the weight of the will pressed harder. This was her only chance. Finally, she looked up, her voice firm. "Fine, I'll do it. But understand this. I'm not your pawn. If I agree, it's because I refuse to let my mother's legacy die." A rare smile touched Jack's lips. "Good. I like fire." That night, under the cover of secrecy, they drove to Ikoyi Registry. The registrar raised an eyebrow at the unusual pair, but paperwork and a signed certificate made the union official. "Congratulations," the registrar said flatly. "You're husband and wife." As Molly signed her new name, her hands shook, not from regret, but from the enormity of it all. In less than 24 hours, she had survived attempted murder, made a pact with a stranger, and bound her fate to a man she barely knew. Walking out into the humid Lagos night, Molly whispered to herself, "I have married a wolf to fight the wolves in my own house. But will he protect me? Or devour me too?" Jack opened the car door for her, his expression unreadable. "Welcome to the game, Mrs. Magnus. From now on, everything changes." And deep down, Molly knew he was right. The next morning, Lagos woke up to headlines that shook the city's elite. Heiress Molly Linton marries in secret company now secure in her hands. At the Linton mansion, chaos erupted. Richard Linton slammed the newspaper onto the marble table, his face red with fury. Vanessa, his calculating wife, sipped her tea calmly, though her eyes flickered with rage. Beside her, Clara scrolled through her phone, her jaw tight. "She made a fool of us," Richard growled. "And she did it with a Magnus of all people." Vanessa leaned forward, her voice sharp as glass. Don't you see? It wasn't just a marriage, it was a power play. She's joined forces with the one family we cannot control. Clara sneered. She must think this thug will protect her. But what happens when he turns on her? He's no prince. He's a criminal. Her marriage will collapse, and when it does, we'll be waiting. Meanwhile, Molly arrived at Linton Holdings headquarters hand in hand with Jack Magnus. Gasps rippled through the boardroom as directors rose from their seats. The timid whispers of doubt that had followed Molly for years suddenly transformed into curiosity and a measure of respect. Richard stormed into the meeting, his voice booming. This is nonsense. This marriage is invalid. You cannot run a company with a Magnus at your side. Molly stood tall, her tailored navy dress exuding power. Invalid? The law says otherwise, Father. My marriage certificate is registered, and by Mother's will, the company is mine. The room fell silent. Richard's face darkened. You would betray your own blood for this outsider? Molly's voice trembled, but she did not falter. No, Father. You betrayed me long before this. You stole from me, lied to me, and tried to kill me. I will never forgive that. Vanessa rose, her tone sickly sweet. My dear, you exaggerate. Family disagreements happen. Surely you don't believe we would harm you? Molly's fists clenched. Don't insult me. I know what you did. And if you try again, you'll regret it. Jack stepped forward then, his presence dominating the room. His voice was calm, but his words cut like steel. Let me make this clear. Molly is under my protection now. Anyone who dares harm her will answer to me. The board members shifted nervously. Everyone knew the Magnus' influence stretched far beyond business into the dark veins of Lagos underworld. Rich's voice shook with suppressed rage. You think you won, Molly? This isn't over. You may hold the company today, but you won't survive tomorrow. Molly met his gaze with fire in her eyes. Then let tomorrow come. I'm ready. As she walked out with Jack, her heart pounded. She had faced her father and stepmother and won, for now. But their threats lingered like smoke in the air. She knew they wouldn't stop. The war for Linton Holdings had only just begun. The days after the boardroom confrontation were a blur of whispered scandals and power plays. For the first time since her mother's death, Molly Linton felt she was standing on solid ground, but it was ground soaked in danger. Living under the same roof as Jack Magnus was both unsettling and oddly comforting. His mansion in Ikoyi was grand but guarded like a fortress, with armed men at every gate. At night, Molly lay awake listening to the hum of Lagos traffic outside, torn between gratitude and fear. One evening, as she sat at the dining table, Jack poured himself a glass of palm wine, his gaze fixed on her. You're quiet, he said. I'm thinking, Molly replied curtly. About? She set her fork down, her eyes hard. About the fact that I had to marry a stranger to save what was mine. About how my own father tried to kill me. About what you want from me, Jack. His lips twitched into a half smile. I already told you. Influence, connections. You give me your name, I give you protection. He leaned closer, his voice lowering. But don't mistake my help for charity. I expect loyalty. Molly stiffened. I'm not your possession. His eyes darkened, though his tone remained steady. No, but you're my wife. And in my world, that means no one touches you, not even your family. The weight of his words lingered long after dinner. Jack's loyalty was dangerous. It came with invisible chains. The next morning, Molly slipped into her late mother's study at the company headquarters. Dust covered the shelves, but her mother's spirit seemed to live in the walls. As she sifted through files, a locked drawer caught her attention. After hours of searching, she found the key hidden in the spine of an old law book. Inside were documents, bank transfers, secret accounts, embezzlement records. Page after page showed how Richard Linton and Vanessa had drained millions from Linton Holdings over the years, funneling it into luxury properties abroad. Her hands trembled as she clutched the evidence. They didn't just betray me, they robbed my mother's legacy. But before she could process it further, she felt a shadow fall across her. She turned to see Jack standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You found something," he said quietly. Molly hesitated, then showed him the files. "This is proof. Proof that they stole everything. With this, I can finally bring them down." Jack studied the documents, then met her gaze. "Be careful, Molly. Truth is powerful, but power without control is deadly. If you use this wrong, they'll destroy you before you destroy them." Her chest tightened. She hated to admit it, but he was right. That night, Molly lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. She had the evidence. She had a powerful husband, if only by name. But her enemies were desperate, and desperation made people reckless. For the first time, she whispered into the silence, "Mom, guide me. I can't let them win." From the shadows of the room, Jack's voice answered softly, startling her. "Then you won't. Not as long as I'm here." In a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of Surulere, Lagos, Grace Parker sat on the cold floor of a bare room, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her spirit hollowed out by loss. Only 2 days earlier, uniformed officers had knocked on her door with a court order. They accused her of neglect, claiming her one-room apartment was unfit for raising a child. She had pleaded, begged, and even fallen to her knees, but it made no difference. Her daughter, Lily Parker, only 7 years old, was taken away in tears, clutching her mother's wrapper and screaming, "Mommy, don't let them take me!" Grace's heart shattered as she was held back by strangers. Now, alone in silence, she whispered the only words she knew. "She's all I have. Please, God, don't let them take her from me forever." Meanwhile, across Lagos, Molly sat in the back of Jack's SUV as the convoy moved through traffic. Her eyes were heavy from lack of sleep, her mind burdened by evidence of betrayal and the looming battle ahead. As they stopped at an intersection, her gaze drifted outside, and she saw a woman sitting on the curb, her face buried in her hands, her cries echoing against the busy street. Something inside Molly stirred. She recognized that look, the hollow despair of a woman stripped of everything. Later that evening, Molly asked Jack's driver to stop by the neighborhood. She approached Grace gently, offering her bottled water and a packet of food. Grace looked up, her eyes red, and managed a broken smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "What happened?" Molly asked softly. Grace's voice cracked. "They took her. My Lily. They said I wasn't fit to care for her, but she's all I have. They don't understand. I may be poor, but I love her more than my own life." Molly felt tears sting her eyes. She thought of her own mother, gone too soon, and how her father had twisted her legacy. She thought of the boardroom battles, the embezzlement, the staged accident. And she realized the fight wasn't just about wealth, it was about dignity. It was about mothers and daughters, about legacies stolen by those with power. She reached out, taking Grace's trembling hands in hers. "Listen to me. You are not unfit. You are not worthless. They may have taken her now, but one day you will hold her again, and when you do, you will be stronger." Grace sobbed, nodding, clinging to Molly's words like a lifeline. As Molly left that night, her heart burned with renewed determination. Her battle with her father and stepmother was bigger than her, It was about women like Grace, whose lives were destroyed by greed, corruption, and injustice. She whispered to herself in the darkness, "This isn't just my fight. It's for every woman silenced, every child stolen, every legacy stolen by those who think they cannot be stopped. I will not let them win." Jack, seated beside her, studied her quietly. For the first time, he saw not just a woman fighting for survival, but a leader in the making. The rain had just ended in Victoria Island, leaving the streets glistening under the glow of car headlights. Molly walked out of the Linton Holdings building, her handbag heavy with the files she had smuggled out of her mother's old study. Each page was a knife aimed at her father and Vanessa. As she stepped onto the pavement, she heard a small voice behind her. "Excuse me, ma'am. Your watch." Molly turned. A little girl stood there, drenched from the rain, but smiling bravely. She held out a delicate gold watch Molly hadn't even realized had slipped from her wrist. Molly bent down. "Thank you, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Lily," the girl replied softly. The name hit Molly like thunder. She stared at the child. Big brown eyes, curly hair, a shy but determined spirit. Something in her face echoed the innocence Molly thought she had lost forever. "You remind me of someone," Molly whispered, brushing the child's wet hair from her forehead. Just then, Grace appeared, rushing toward them, panic in her eyes. "Lily, I told you not to run off." She froze when she saw Molly. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The heiress and the broken mother locked in silent understanding. Lily tugged at her mother's hand. "Mommy, this nice lady said I remind her of someone." Grace smiled sadly, bowing slightly. "Forgive her, madam. She's only a child." But Molly shook her head. "No, she's more than that." She knelt to Lily's height. "You know, Lily, you should always hold on to things that matter. That watch is special to me. Just like you're special to your mom." Lily beamed, her innocence lighting up the damp night. As they parted, Molly slipped her driver a note. "Find out everything about this family, quietly." The next day, the report arrived. Grace's daughter had been taken into state custody on Vanessa's orders. Vanessa had used her influence in the social welfare office, painting Grace as an unfit mother. Molly's blood boiled. Her stepmother's cruelty wasn't limited to her. It spread to women like Grace, destroying lives with the flick of a pen. That night, as she sat in Jack's study, she spread the evidence across the table. The embezzlement records, the fraudulent custody files, the trails of corruption. Her hands shook with anger, but her eyes glowed with resolve. Jack leaned against the desk, watching her. "You found more?" "Yes," Molly said firmly. "My stepmother has ruined more lives than mine. She tried to kill me. She's stealing from Linton Holdings, and now she's destroying innocent families. Jack, I can't let her win." Jack's gaze lingered on her, thoughtful. "Be careful, Molly. Going after her means war. You've already seen what your family is capable of." Molly lifted her chin. "Then let it be war. I won't just fight for myself. I'll fight for Grace, for Lily, for every woman they've crushed. This isn't just business anymore. It's justice." For the first time, Jack allowed himself a faint smile. "Now you're thinking like someone who can't be broken." Molly met his eyes with steel. "I was broken once. Never again." The boardroom of Linton Holdings was filled to the brim. Executives and shareholders and journalists lined the glossy mahogany table, their faces tense with anticipation. The air crackled with tension. Word had spread that Molly Linton would present evidence that could change everything. Richard Linton and Vanessa sat confidently at the head of the table, Clara by their side. Vanessa wore her victory like a crown, dressed in an emerald gown and diamonds that glittered under the lights. She leaned over to Richard, whispering, "She won't have the courage. She's weak." But when the doors swung open, Molly strode in with Jack Magnus beside her. She was calm, composed, dressed in a fitted white suit that radiated authority. She looked nothing like the frightened heiress they once underestimated. "Good morning," Molly began, her voice steady. "I stand before you, not as the little girl my family sought to control, but as the rightful head of this company, appointed by my late mother's will." Richard scoffed. "Nonsense. You're a child playing at power. You married this gangster to pretend you're strong, but you'll never lead this company." Molly didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled out a thick folder and laid it on the table. "Then explain these," she said. Page by page, she revealed bank transfers, offshore accounts, fraudulent custody papers, all bearing Vanessa and Richard's names. Gasps filled the room. Journalists scribbled furiously. Cameras clicked. "This is slander," Vanessa snapped, her mask cracking. "No," Molly replied coldly. "This is evidence. Evidence that you embezzled millions from Linton Holdings. Evidence that you staged attempts on my life to secure control. Evidence that you used your influence to destroy innocent families, like Grace Parker and her daughter Lily." The room erupted. Executives murmured in shock. Shareholders glared at Richard, and journalists demanded answers. Richard slammed the table. "Enough! Guards, remove her!" But before anyone could move, Jack stepped forward, his presence like thunder. His voice was low but commanding. "Anyone who touches her answers to me." The guards froze. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. Molly straightened, her gaze fixed on her father. "For years you stole from me, lied to me, tried to silence me. But today the truth speaks louder than your threats. From this moment, you have no power here." Richard's face twisted with fury, but words faltered. Vanessa clutched his arm, her confidence collapsing, as the shareholders began to call for a vote of removal. One by one, hands rose in support of Molly. The decision was unanimous. She was declared the new CEO of Linton Holdings. Tears welled in Molly's eyes, but she did not let them fall. Instead, she stood taller. "This company will no longer be a weapon of greed. It will be a legacy of justice, as my mother intended." As security escorted Richard, Vanessa, and Clara out of the building, Molly turned to the press. "To every woman who has been silenced, every child who has been taken, every legacy stolen, I promise you, change is possible. Today proves it." Jack's eyes met hers, a faint smile on his lips. "You did it." Molly exhaled, her voice a whisper meant only for herself. "No, we did it. For Mom, for Grace, for Lily, for every voice they tried to silence." The boardroom erupted in applause. For the first time in years, Molly felt free. She had not only reclaimed her mother's empire, she had reclaimed her dignity, her strength, and her future.